this time, I would ask that everyone stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call. Director Anderson? You're muted.
No, I'm not. Here.
Director Mannanen?
Here.
Director Ladigar?
Here.
Director Schoberg?
Here.
Director Addy?
Here.
And Stacy Sundquist for Virginia is here as well. At this time, I would ask that for any additions or deletions to the agenda.
None here, Madam Chair.
Pardon?
None here, Madam Chair.
Oh, so at this point, I would entertain a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
So
I will
moved.
make that motion.
Oh,
Brandy will make the motion.
Okay, and then Murray for support.
yes.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Madam Chair,
Aye.
Yes?
We have roll call.
all the votes have to be roll call.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Do we want one of the secretaries to go through that, or do you want me to do that?
However you want.
Doesn't matter to me. I can do it,
how
or
about-
if you want to do it.
How about Matt calls them out and Stacy will make note of it?
Stacy Lampa?
Yes. All right.
That
Um,
works.
Okay, Director Anderson,
Aye.
Director Addy,
Yes.
Does he-
Director Lodiger,
He's currently
Yeah.
filling in for Kelly.
Director Mannanen,
Aye.
Director Sundquist, Director Sundquist.
I think she locked up on us.
She's frozen.
She's still smiling.
I'll call her.
She'll be back. Maybe go through the others.
Director Schoberg's an aye.
My phone's.
Of course, the vice chair is Kelly.
Yeah.
The downfalls of technology sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just amazed. This is the fourth one of these I've been on today, and this is the first time this has happened.
Really?
I've been on them for 2 weeks and I haven't never seen this before.
Texting said her internet went down.
Hello?
You're not on.
I know. I don't know if my just peaked out, but now it doesn't.
Now,
Well, that's what it says, but I can't get back into the meeting.
Stay on the phone.
I'll send you a new.
Can you just lay the phone next to the computer like you are with us, Jeff?
You can't do that with board members. They have to be seen.
you gotta be seen.
All right.
Is there a spot where you can add her? Like if she tries coming in, is there a spot where you can add her?
I'm going to send her a new.
Sign up.
I'm sending you a new email right now.
Okay,
Did you hear that?
I did, yep.
Okay.
Wonderful.
I'll give you something to look at. That's my backyard.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
This is not up there.
See, Tim Reardon made it in. This is an exciting meeting for people at home, huh?
Yeah.
Any word from Stacy, Marie? Or you're on mute.
She's still trying.
Yeah, I can't. Just trying to get back into my email here. I don't know what's going on. It says I'm connected, but I never got another link from Jeff.
Oh, and okay. Let me try again.
If you can't do it from your computer, you can also do it from your phone if you have the Zoom app.
I believe.
These cliff notes, everything. I didn't realize that.
Casey, turn that picture. The picture. Turn it. Look at it.
Just tried sending Stacy another one.
It's
Okay.
shutting.
Oh, there she's at. There she is. She's back.
I'm back. Sorry. Okay.
All right.
You just got to vote on approving the agenda and we can move on.
Aye.
Director Sunquist,
Aye.
vote to approve the agenda. The other 5 were yes.
I'm a yes on that as well.
Thank you.
All right, next is approval of the treasurer's report for the month of February and March. Marie?
All right. Some notes. You looked at everything from the last month. The estimates, they were all estimates, the figures. Over the whole, Spencer said the interest income was like about almost like $100 more because it was just an estimate. Okay. Last month. Now this month. If you looked at it, it's the matured interest and stuff like that. We're down a little bit, like $12,000. But the biggest problem, or not problem, but he said they come due different times. There's parts of it that come due at different times. So that's why there's a follow-up. On one of the on the back of the sheet or the second sheet, I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that Stacy Ani got reimbursed $265.80. But she was the first one to submit a reimbursement from the Colorado trip. Okay, so it wasn't like that she got any treatment or anything. There's also on the sheet, you'll see there's about $29,000 that was extra from the first payment of bond payment, and that was rolled into the building funds. So at right now, I talked to him, said, we were down some money, and he said, and that's going to happen up and down again, up and down. The capital interest was paid. Ehlers is in contact at least twice, 3 times a week about the whole process with the volatility of the markets and all this other stuff. But as of right now, we are at or above the initial interest income than what we had planned for. So, all right, and that's about all I got. Any questions?
It appears no questions. I would entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
So move.
Who was that? Mr. Director Schoberg?
Greg,
Oh, sorry. Support?
Support.
And now, does Director Schoberg do a roll call vote?
Director Anderson,
Aye.
Director Addy,
Aye.
Director Mannanen,
Aye.
Director Lotiger,
Aye.
Director Sunquist,
Aye.
Director Schoberg, yes.
Hey, Madam Chair?
Yes?
When people are making a motion, say, for instance, motion Brandy, second Greg, stop, just say
Okay.
your name.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the regular meeting on February 3rd of 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Director Anderson and second by Director Addy. Any discussion? Take the roll call vote, please.
Director Addy,
Yes.
Director Mannanen,
Aye.
Director Lotiger,
Yes.
Director Sunquist,
Aye.
Director Schoberg is a yes. Director Anderson.
Aye.
All right. Under new business, we have the preliminary milestone schedule from Kraus Anderson.
Madam Chair, I'm gonna. Something happened here.
I think you went to share screen.
I'm gonna go share screen here. Oops, I got. All right, I have folks from Kraus Anderson on the line. They're gonna explain the milestone schedule. Go ahead, Pat.
So this is Patrick Gallagher. Thank you, everybody, for, first of all, meeting on this special board meeting date so it could coincide with our DD estimate for the elementary school. We're going to cover 5 different subjects today that are on your agenda, one being the overall milestone schedule, 2 being the overall referendum budget, 3 being the commissioning bids that we had and we are making a recommendation for award, 4 being the hazardous material consultant that we bid, and we're going to also make a recommendation for award of that, as well as the DD estimate. So the first one being the schedule, which is on the screen. We heard you loud and clear last meeting. There was concern that, we don't have a milestone schedule out there for public information or for the board's information. We A lot of things were in flux over the last 6 months, but we do feel that now we've got this pretty nailed down. It is a pretty general schedule. I'll tell you, there are many, many lines of schedule that build behind each one of these. These are collapse type paths. And this gives our overall schedule. The first item being the elementary number 1, which is the Evelyn Gilbert Elementary. And I'm putting the whole thing to you because you can read them, obviously. We gave you a design period, a bidding period, then a construction time frame, and then when we would be looking to have you take occupancy, and then a move-in time period for when the districts will be moving into their space. And then there'll be an orientation period there to get to know the space, and then actual school starting for each of we'll call it 4 projects, 3 building projects and 1 demolition project. And, the 3 projects that are buildings are elementary 1, the high school, and we've got structural demolition, and then the elementary number 2 in Virginia. We feel this is a good summary of those key milestones. As things change, we have to change the schedule, but we feel we're pretty well nailed into this. And at this time, I'd ask if there are any questions.
Any questions from any board members?
A question I would have, Pat, is that I see that from our original estimate back in June, the opening of the elementary and the high school have both slipped a year. And what are the primary reasons for that?
Yeah, the main issue is if you look at when construction is completed, we get done with the elementary in about November 12th there for the completion date. We're looking at occupancy in November. Because we can't get it done in time to start the school year, there were a lot of discussions about, do you want to move in mid-year? So it's not really a year late. It's just that because you're not willing to disrupt, and I can fully understand, disrupt your education cycle, we wait until the following September in order to occupy. So, elementary number 1 is November it's completed. So you have from November all the way through to the August time frame to move in. That's a good thing for moving. It's a bit of you've got 2 buildings functioning during that time, so it's a little bit of extra cost in that manner, but that is the elementary. On the high school, that's a 30-month schedule. That gets done in January of 23. So again, can't really occupy a school year, but then you've got from January all the way until August again to get moved. So does that answer your question? It really comes down to when that schedule ends. If it's in a school year, then we defaulted to go all the way to the next school year.
Hey, Pat, this is Jeff. As a board, they haven't discussed whether or not starting in the middle or opening in the middle of the year would be a good idea or not. We just haven't had that discussion yet, but we do understand that that's the date of completion now.
Those dates,
Go ahead.
also those dates when we finish like in November or in the middle of the year, God help us, hopefully there's not any problem. But if there are problems, that does give us some time there's some building problems or heavy snow or whatever, that does give us some time if we decide to do those fall move-ins. It gives us a window of grace there almost.
Yes, it does give you schedule float without affecting, the move-in process. But obviously, we want to complete the projects as quick as we can because every month that we're actually working construction, it costs money. But
Exactly.
you're right, it does give us that schedule flexibility. And that discussion about a mid-year move, as Jeff had mentioned, is maybe something that needs to be discussed internally. That was an assumption we made just based on initial questioning that we had with members of the team.
All makes sense to me. Thank you.
Okay. It's all really linked together. As you can see from this, you have to, the high school is the critical path. The elementary school is less of a critical path, the first elementary, because you're basically moving from one building to another, and there's not anything else going to go on at that existing elementary school. But the high school has to be complete before you can move the Virginia students, which allows us to then demolish the majority of the buildings on the Virginia site so that we can start the last elementary school. So obviously you probably made that linkage as you looked at this, but that is what pushes that schedule. And then a part of that demolition is the hazardous material abatement of those existing structures. And that's why we have that consultant on our agenda to approve that professional service so we can get that process on our way to analyze that and to put packages together to bid that abatement. Because they have to be abated before we can demolish them. Okay. Any questions on the milestone schedule? And we'll keep updating this and bringing new versions to the board meetings to let you know if there are any changes. We just wanted this as a baseline to start.
Any questions from any board members? Doesn't look like it, Pat.
Okay, good. And no decision on that. That was for your information. Now we'll move on to the overall referendum budget. So this has been a working document as well over the last, well, really ever since the referendum. You've seen various versions of it. Note that we've got the projects listed across the top, from the first elementary to the high school to the structural demo to the Virginia elementary, similar to what we have on schedule. And the top portion being the funding source and the available funding, with some comments there that we added funding in a different areas, one being in the Evelyn Gilbert. We added alternate funding, $3 million, and then on the high school, we added $1.5 million. So that has accounted for, which gives you that blue line, which is the total project funding. So then section 2 below that is project expenses, and this reads like an accounting type spreadsheet. We have hard costs for construction, which hard costs are actually contracted doing work on a project type of costs. And then below that, we have section, that's 2A, the hard costs, and then section 2B are the soft costs. And the soft costs are things that cost money. If you can scroll down just a little bit, things that cost money, but aren't really a tangible piece of the project. And you can see examples of that. It's paying Cross Anderson for our services, paying the architect, building permits, all those items that we have listed there. Now, on previous versions, you had less detail than this. You had larger pieces, or I'll call them buckets of money. And then we have provided a little more detail on how those break down. And then on the line item like furniture, fixtures, and equipment there that's highlighted, that's bolded there, there's another breakout that breaks that down even further. So this provides you that visibility of how much money do I have for each project, and how do we currently have it budgeted to be spent for each project. And again, last meeting, I believe there was a question on when are we going to see a budget, and this is the result of that question. We've gone through and looked at this many times with various different team members, and again, this will change as time goes on. We'll provide updates to you. If you can scroll up a little bit to the hard costs again, please. So those hard costs, what we are doing on our estimating and what you have seen on our slides, and you'll see them again today, is the purple bar there. So under the hard costs for the elementary, the 27.2 million, that's what we are estimating to. And on the high school, it's 92 million, and so on there for the other two projects, which we haven't estimated yet. And the reason we just zero in on that purple line is those are the hard costs that we can estimate. And then the soft costs down below are really supporting type costs that we don't really bid out on bid day. Are there any questions about this document?
Any board members have any questions? Doesn't look like it.
Okay.
I'm glad that we're seeing a budget. I know Matt has asked about it multiple times. I'm glad we're seeing something on paper.
Yes, thank you.
You bet. And if you look back at the first, there's about 20 different versions of this, that's the inception of the project that we have on in our folders on our computers. And it's not like we make a new one every time we go to do a budget. We've always gone back to the original referendum and then just provided further breakdown of those costs. So it's pretty easy to follow that process. So yeah, we'll keep you up to date on this as well. Once we bid a project, then we'll lock those prices in. If we save money, then we'll have that additional money to move to the right to the next project that bids, and so on and so forth. And it's kind of a living, breathing document that changes as well. Bottom line is that it doesn't exceed, the total at the bottom.
So that's it. You're within the budget. And
Yeah.
we all know that we cannot spend more than what we've got, right?
Exactly. And that's why if you don't have the sub dollar amounts or the subtotals, I guess, under each one of these line items, it's very easy to get near the end and blow past your budget. But we totally get that we need to live within each one of these dollar amounts.
And that's one of the, it's been a bone of contention. Some people within the communities is that we're not going to have enough money. We're going to go over budget. And, this is I don't know how many times you've said it, Pat, or a representative from Krause, that we will not go over budget.
Exactly. And if you don't have a tool like this, Mr. Anderson, then that's when you have that problem.
Right.
I mean, you won't know until it's too late, right?
Exactly. So, well, thank you.
Okay. You got. So the next slide.
Hang on. The chair has to switch agenda items.
Okay.
Yeah, we can, go ahead and move on to the mechanical and electrical commissioning services. Ed.
Okay. Thank you. So we did do a bidding process for professional services to provide mechanical and electrical commissioning. So for those of you that aren't real familiar with this process, even though you have a design professional that is designing your mechanical and electrical systems, they are very complicated. And it is a state requirement to provide a certain amount of commissioning. And the reason for that is it's one thing to design a system. It's another to verify that it was installed properly and that it functions properly per the design intent. And that takes a certain qualification that these firms that we got prices from provide. And we added one additional element, or two additional elements actually. One was bring them in at the design phase, which is pretty common but not required by state requirements, to work with the design team to provide a second set of eyes and an outside perspective on other ideas from the commissioning agent to be incorporated into the design before bidding. And then you've got the construction administration, where they are out on site periodically checking on the contractors and the installation of the mechanical system. And then you have the post-construction, where they come in and they test and make sure that the system actually achieves the results and the performance that was intended by the design. We did the basic commissioning services that are required by the state, and that is on the letter there at $103,000. And then we have the alternate number one, which is adding the design phase for $8,000. Alternate two is adding the construction administration. So being there, attending our construction meetings and doing site inspections. And then the last, for $39,000. And then adding the post-construction, or that commissioning piece at the end, for $16,000. So that is a $3,000 onto the $103,000, which is the total of $166,000 falls in what we had budgeted for commission project.
Hey, Pat?
Yeah.
Can you let the board members know if there were any other bids and what they were? So just so they have a ballpark of where this one sits.
Yes, we're, KFI was the other contractor, and was another contractor, and don't know those in front of me right now for the dollar amounts. You don't have your copy available, do you, Jeff?
I don't have it in front of me here. Hang on.
You have,
But go ahead, just keep going. I'll find it.
Yeah, we did provide those over to the administrators, and they were higher prices than this.
Hey, Pat, this is Director here. Is this commissioning of just one building, both buildings, or all three buildings together?
It is all three buildings. That's a good question. I should have said that up front.
Yeah.
It is all three buildings.
So they will oversee the mechanical and electrical installation of all three buildings. That's correct, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
I got it here, Pat. We have one for 190,000. And one for 230.
Jeff,
And
are you?
just so everyone knows,
I just had a question. Were those for the same level of services?
Yes, that would be all the alternates as well.
Okay, thank you.
Good questions. What we did is we put out a common scope letter to all three individuals, so they were all the same. They all have linked to the plans, the same set of and version of the plans that we had up so far, because we only have the elementary and the high school, and then just a concept for the Virginia elementary. And then we also did follow-up calls with each to verify scope, to make sure that we had, we call it an apples to apples comparison, so that we have the same price for the same amount of scope of each. That's standard practice when we bid anything out. And this was the true apparent low after all of that.
Or just for the board members, so I'm gonna read off the prices of the base bid and the alternates, which you're bidding on tonight. So Halberg, which KA is recommending, is at 166,000. Dunham Engineering came in with the alternates at $356,000, and KFI Engineers came in at $503,000. So we would need a motion. We would need a motion and a second to accept Halberg Engineering as the commissioning agent for the new schools.
Those are some pretty big differences.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Do we have to be seen when, Jeff?
What was that, Bill?
Do we have to be seen when we're voting? Or just vote?
I believe so, but first of all, I need a motion and a support.
I'll make that motion.
Oh, go
Was
ahead.
that Director Anderson made the motion
Yes.
and Director Addy supported?
Madam Chair,
Yes?
just, you should make a call here because Kelly joined us a little while ago too, so she's on the call.
Oh, yep, I did want to make note of that for the record that
Okay.
Director Sather is present. And do we still have Director Mannanen? Yep, there he is.
Chair, Madam Chair,
Yes?
could I just specify to make clear, since I was late and Director Addy has been able to participate the entire time, that he would be our voting member tonight? Would that be acceptable?
That's fine.
Okay.
So any further discussion on the motion on the table? Hearing no further discussion, Director Schoberg, will you take a roll call vote?
Director Sunquist,
Aye.
Director Anderson,
Aye.
Director Addy,
Yes.
Director Lotiger,
Yes.
Director Mannanen,
Aye.
and Director Schoberg is a aye.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is review elementary design and development estimates.
No, well,
Hazardous materials.
we gotta do hazardous materials bid first.
Sorry about that. My barking dogs threw me off.
So that motion was carried and this is approved, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so on the screen right now is the hazardous materials recommendation that we have, the hazardous materials consultant. What this individual does, or this organization does, is they go through the current records that you have in each of the existing facilities. So that includes the Virginia campus, the Gilbert campus, and Lift campus. And as a requirement from the state, you have had to have a certain amount of scrutiny on your existing facilities and have that documented. So basically, you know where you have hazardous materials within the building. They were provided those documents and they were provided the locations. And again, there was a standard letter soliciting this, that everyone had the same information. What they will do is they will provide a more thorough assessment of each one of those campuses by building. So they will go through each and every room within each of the campuses. And because they have a good wealth of knowledge of both the time periods when hazardous materials were used in construction, as well as a good visual eye for, hey, that looks like it has asbestos, that peeling paint could be lead. They will document any suspect materials. They will lift ceiling tiles. They will look at pipe joints, and then they will take samples. And then they will test those samples and verify whether they are indeed hazardous materials or not. So that first part that I just described to you is the part of the survey. And that survey will then be written up in a formal report. And again, it builds on the information you already have. So the information that was provided to us from your facilities department really saves time, money, and effort in that surveying process. And then what they will do is put together an abatement plan and bid documents for contractors to bid, abatement contractors, to bid for the removal of those materials. That's the second part of their scope. And then the third part of their scope is to actually bid, recommend award, and then supervise and monitor. The third part is supervision and monitoring of the abatement during the abatement of those materials. And then at the end, they will do a summary letter that summarizes that the removal and certifies that the removal of those materials was done properly and is complete. That letter and that closure report is what we need in order to have permission to demolish those buildings. So we sent this to two different contractors, actually three different contractors for Virginia and two different contractors for Evelyn Gilbert. And I did call up my email around this so I can give you those dollar amounts. But just looking at the quote that you have in front of you there for Virginia, for that campus, we have a dollar amount of $21,550. Oh, I lost the screen there. Can you reshare, Jeff?
I'm going to pull that document up for you, Pat.
Oh,
the bid doc.
Okay. And I have one here as well. But I'll wait for you to pull that up. So just so while we're waiting for that to come up, on Virginia, we had three contractors. There it is. NTS, which is out of Virginia, IEA, which has an office, I believe it's in Mountain Iron, and then Arrowhead Consultants out of Duluth. IEA had provided some services to the Virginia district in the past on that state required survey document that you have to have. So it made a lot of sense to get a price from them as well as the NPS, who is just down the street from you. And then on the Evelyn Gilbert, we went with NPS again and Arrowhead Consultants. So those are the dollar amounts for that survey portion and the bid documents portion. Now, the third piece that I talked about, the actual supervision of the abatement, we got some preliminary pricing for budgeting, but we are not asking for approval of that today because those are very speculative at this point until you get the survey done so you know what you have for materials that are hazardous, and you get the bid document done so that you can find out what the price of that abatement will be. It's very difficult to price the monitoring and the supervision piece. But right now we're just looking for the approval of that survey and bid document. And as you can see, Arrowhead Consultants was considerably lower. Again, we called NTS and Arrowhead Consultants back, had quite a few discussions with them and verified scope, and that we did have an apples to apples comparison.
So we would need a motion and a second to approve the hazardous materials bid.
Pat, if I can ask a question, is it common to see such wide ranges on bids like this?
I think a part of it is Okay, I have to take them separately. On the commissioning, I think a part of it is the travel distance from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, because all of those contractors that are based out of there, it takes a larger metro area to have these types of services. But Hallberg opened an office several years ago in the Duluth area and has been operating out of there. So I think that's a part of their efficiency. I can only speculate, but that would be that's why after our conversations, we feel comfortable recommending Hallberg on that. On this, Arrowhead Consultants is a local, they work the Iron Range in the Duluth area. They have a pretty low overhead on how they operate their business. This is quite a bit of a difference. So we did call NTS back, and they did provide, they said they could lower their price, but after we already have this prices out there, that's not appropriate for proper bidding practices. But even after they lowered their price, they weren't lower than Arrowhead Consultants.
Do we have a motion?
Could
We're
we
being asked
back
to,
to the letter just so they can see that, Beth, please. Okay, so that the motion would be to approve the $39,925, and that would, again, even though I talked about three different portions of the services, that would only include the survey and the bid documents and that process.
and that's going with Arrowhead Consulting.
Yes.
And then there's also an abatement program written in also.
After this consultant is able to provide the survey and then do the bidding for the contractors, then we would ask for their price to actually manage that on the actual supervision and monitoring of the abatement.
Okay.
Anyone want to make a
And
motion?
I'm sorry, just one more thing. On that referendum budget that I showed you before, you'll see that there's considerably more than the $39,000 in that budget for this, and that accounts for what we estimate being the actual construction administration or monitoring piece. So you've still got extra money or additional money in the budget for that.
Stacy, Director Addy will move on this.
Okay, we've got a motion from Director Addy. Do I have support?
Brandy will support.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Director Schoberg, will you take a roll call vote?
Director Addy,
Yes.
Director Sunquist,
Yes.
Director Lotiger,
Yes.
Director Mannanen,
Aye.
Director Schoberg, yes, Director Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes. And so the final item with Kraus Anderson is the elementary design and development estimates.
And he is putting up that slide deck. You've seen this before. We are keeping the same type of a template so that it isn't something new every time we bring an estimate before you. The main reason why we're doing the meeting today versus at the beginning of the month, because we want to take advantage of every moment of time we have, and we do have this completed. So we'll go through this as the design development presentation. So this is the agenda, and we followed pretty much the same format we had before with a few changes on the interim items. First part being the estimating process. Just to show you where we are in the pre-construction, just before the bidding process, we start. And then within that pre-construction piece, we're at the design development phase. So this is where we are today on our, I'll call it our pre-construction milestone dates here. We showed the high school here as well, just so you have that for reference, but we are talking strictly elementary today. The DD estimate is complete. The next thing that we will do will be a bid package 1, which has the majority of the upfront type contractors, the site work, the concrete, the steel, and the precast. And then a bid package 2, which is in June, which would be all of the remaining work. And as you saw in the earlier schedule, this is all set up to do a late May start on the elementary school. So while we're finalizing the design on the majority of the detailing and the finishes of the building, we can be digging and taking advantage of the summer months to minimize our costs and to maximize our schedule in our very short summer months that we have. So the estimate review. So the key questions that we want to answer for you, they're questions that we feel would be pertinent if we were in your seat. Are the design and budget currently aligned? If not, why? And if not, how do we get them to align? So this is our current status. We are 1.48 million out of alignment right now with our budget as it stands today. Just as a frame of reference, down at the bottom, we have the high school, our SD deviation that we brought to you a couple of months ago here was 6.5%, which is $6 million out of alignment, and we've been working on that ever since. This is 1.48 million, which is 5.4% deviation. Now, this is after we went through with the design team, we completed the estimate, and then we went back and looked at various items that we felt were prime for nice to have things versus have to have things, and we have cut those out of that estimate to get to this level of 1.48 million of alignment that is yet to be done. So that is based on this $27.2 million budget, which we showed you earlier, also in that overall budget. So that $27.2 million budget, and then we are currently at 28.68 million on the estimate. So this is what we have done thus far. When we first did the estimate, we were at 30,759,102. We have value managed over $2 million out of the project. Of those, depends on who you ask, but we'll call them things that would be nice to have versus have to have to meet the intent of your user groups and what you need for what your intent was for these overall projects. And we got down to the 28,679,180. We still have 1.4 million to go to be able to design or revise the design to get within budget. We feel really comfortable with that. I know that, again, is a lot of money, but at this stage of the game on where we're at on the design and with a lot of the allowances and the costs that we have in this estimate, we feel that we're definitely within striking distance to move forward on the bid packages, especially because bid package 1 will bid and we'll have those hard costs back while we're doing a third estimate on the bid pack 2 items. And then we'll be able to, we'll have more of a base of actual bidding market results when we do that. So this is just a summary. The 1.48 million alignment is still required. those are the same items that we had at the SD estimate. This challenging site, there are a lot of items that we have to make sure we have covered because we don't want to, like you had said earlier, go over budget in any one of these different pots of money. The building size grew a little bit. A part of that was just looking at the function in more detail with the advisory team and how things need to function within that building. It did add some additional square footage, so we have to then cut back on some of the finishes and landscaping and things like that to make up for that difference. And that's what we're doing right now in this whole value management piece. And then as the specifications come out and we know that this is the type of tile that the architect is looking for versus a standard tile, we've gone back, and that's just an example, we've gone back and given feedback that, hey, if you look at this type of tile, it's a lot cheaper, and please consider it as being an or equal to what you have, because the market right now, it can save you some money. So that's the process we're going through in this last 1.4 million with the team. Item 3, the $2 million in DE items already applied to the estimate, and we've got that several times in this presentation because there is a set of drawings that we estimated to, and then we made those cuts after. So those value management ideas and those reductions have come after the plan. And we'll continue that value management piece. The last one there, I'm sorry, back up just a little bit, Jeff. The last one, issue alternate pricing for scope flexibility after the bid. So again, this is an estimate, and what the bid market will do, especially with the COVID situation here, we don't know. We've heard some good things that it might be a positive and our pricing might be better, but we don't operate off hope. We operate off math and facts. So what we want to do here is not cut and get within budget and then find that the pricing was better than we had thought, and now we've already cut things out and we're way under budget, but we didn't get all those nice things that we wanted to have in the building. So the way to do that is we still are working with the design team to provide alternate pricing so that if we do find ourselves in that situation, we could easily add those back. And because they were bid at the same time, it is in compliance with the bidding laws of the state of Minnesota. So that alternate pricing would allow you to add those items back. And they're normally items that are relatively easy to add back in without changing the design significantly. So an example of an alternate that would be good would be, let's change the floor finish from A to the floor finish that's a B item that's a higher quality finish. That's an easy and a good alternate price. An example of a bad alternate would be, let's add a wing onto the building, or let's add a floor onto the building, because that would affect so many other things that it would require a lot of extra design. So those alternates are what we're working on in conjunction with that value management at this time with the design team. Okay, Jeff, thank you. So in conclusion, we are refining and assessing here. All the team members are. We actually had 2 phone calls today with the design team. We're getting really close on getting that alignment corrected and getting within our current budget for the design. We're continuing to evaluate those ad alternates, and they are refining the specification and the details so that we make sure what actually gets bid is reflective of what the intent is for the design. And that design intent of the building is something that goes on every week, but every other week for each project with the advisory team when we meet on our Thursday meeting. So that is where we are at, and we're asking at this time that, given that alignment that we feel we can achieve, that we allow the design team to move forward with bid package number 1 and to put that out for bids. Are there any questions?
Are we going to be able to, this is Director Addy, are we going to be able to see the floor plan once it's done? Are we going to be able to see the floor plan of this new elementary school?
I can send it out to board members. I think they're almost done with the revision, so I'll send it out like in the next couple of days.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from board members?
Just, this is Director Schober, just one comment more than a question, and I'm sure I'm speaking to the choir here, but just encouraging us whenever possible to, I mean, function is the most important thing. A lot of times it's nice to, have fancy tile or whatever, but it's more important how much it costs and how it functions.
Exactly. And that's a part of what happened here with some adding of additional square foot in the elementary. Director Silver, it was realized that it didn't work for some of the function, so additional square footage had to be put in, and then so that is having to cut some other things in order to provide that function. But that is a very good point to bring forth. Your design team seems to be really tuned into that.
Well, and the other thing that I'm concerned about is making sure that, we have removable walls or, being able to have individual classrooms if we need to or want to. Like 20 years down the road, maybe they don't want the big open spaces, and being able to accommodate or adapt to have individual classrooms if necessary.
I'll show you the update, Brandy, later this week, but I think we're moving in the right direction in that area. I think it looks pretty good. I'm pretty comfortable with what's going on.
Jeff, I have a question on this elementary. Will there be like a facility for cooking food, or is it all going to be brought in, or how is that going to work?
Well, it'll be considered. I mean, the central kitchen for the district will be in the high school. There will be a facility where they can cook things though in the elementary, but the majority of it will be the hot stuff will be prepared in the high school.
Okay. I just didn't, I want to make sure that if there was like a falling out or something with the food provider, or even if we're going to even still have that food provider, that we
the district will have to decide what direction they go as far as who. It's just a matter of we're setting the kitchen up now.
Okay, very good.
And the teachers and school staff have been a part of this process and providing input on what they feel is functional.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So at this point, do we have a motion to approve the elementary design and development plan?
So move.
By Director Mannanen, support by
Director Lotiger.
Thank you. Director Schoberg, will you call for a roll call vote?
Director Mannanen.
Aye.
Director Addy.
Yes.
Director Anderson.
Aye.
Director Lotiger.
Yes.
Director Sundquist.
Aye.
Director Schoberg is a yes.
The motion passes. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Just one other thing I'd like to mention for informational purposes. We had planned to do a contractor information meeting on the 26th of March. Obviously, with the COVID situation, we were not able to do that. We did put together a set of summary slides that we are issuing out to them tomorrow, and I will provide that to Mr. Carey here as well if he wants to make that part of the meeting minutes, so you have that information, so you know what has been put out.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the
Thank you
agenda
all.
is
Appreciate it.
discussion on donations.
This one is Noel.
Let me unmute myself.
He's muting
All
himself.
right, I had to unmute myself.
Oh, is somebody in the room with you?
Nope, not now. All right, wait. There. All right, any background noise now?
There, now you got her.
Don't see no pictures though. Don't see the,
I'll quit.
right.
There we go.
Okay, want to bring up the topic of donations, not in the extent that you have to do anything now, but just to kind of make you aware that this is something we are going to have to look at down the road. When those who went to Alexander, we probably noticed there were a lot of donations made by various businesses. They had a donation wall, they had names on the wall, and you could see sprinkled throughout the building. They had places where either individuals or companies or families had donated certain things. So what we want to start doing is start thinking about that. Again, you don't need to make any decisions now. This is just so we start thinking about that and setting up the process. This is not necessarily a good time to go out in the communities and seek donations. Why would we be seeking donations? Some of these and most of these are for things that would be above and beyond what we normally would put in. There might be something that somebody wants to put in the building that normally we would not put in there. It could be furniture, it could be some type of equipment in any of the classrooms or any one of the tech ed rooms, could be the floor covering, could be the type of scoreboard that's being up, could be what's on this nameplates of all the rooms. It could be some type of something that's hanging in the interior. It could be something with concessions, could be something with storage. There's an endless number of things that could be opportunities for people or companies or families to donate. So just want to give the joint board the heads up that we will need to talk about this further down the road and talk about how we want to go about this. And the reason why we want to do this is that we want to have a systemic plan to do this, because we don't want to have a situation where all of a sudden a business or a company or someone is hit up by multiple groups and everybody's asking for money for this, that, or the other thing. We don't want to do that. We want to do this in a thoughtful way, have some think behind it, make sure we have some type of priority list. And so just want to, at this point in time, just bring it to your attention. This is something we are going to have to talk about down the road. So we come up with a good plan that makes sense and is also sensitive to the families and businesses in the area. So any questions that any board member has about this, this is something that we're going to have to take a look at before too much time passes.
And I know Stacy and I, when we were down at the MSBA conference, we met with scoreboard manufacturer. They said the big thing about that is, especially the sponsors, I mean, your scoreboard is pretty much paid for. And also those scoreboard manufacturers would also come up and meet with the companies to try and get them to donate. So to me, I mean, donation is definitely a good idea.
I'm glad that we're looking at this, and I agree with what Greg is saying 100%. And I do think that it's time soon to come up with the plan. And I know in the budget for the football field, we'll have a basic scoreboard, but if someone is able to donate for a better scoreboard, then that might save us money on what we budgeted for also. And you can find money for projects like this. I've heard, for instance, that I believe St. Luke's over a 10-year period has donated $1 million for the naming rights on the Proctor Arena. ESCO, I think they have like 50 or 60 signs at their football field that people pay $500 to $1,000 a year for. So there certainly are opportunities to make money for things that that'll come in very helpful for us. I'm fully in favor of that.
And to that, Matt, I would, that's why I had mentioned before that maybe we should look into Minnesota Power and Minnesota Energy for this. And maybe they might be able, for our utilities for the new high school and the high school for Minnesota Power for the electricity to the new high school and gas to the high school as well. And maybe we could utilize, Minnesota Power, they're pretty generous with their money, I would say. So that would probably be another outlet for naming rights.
Well, I think all good things to consider as we are moving forward. Maybe we could each start putting together a list of potential donors, and I'm sure that as we enter further into the project, that we'll have more people approaching us as well about how they can be a part of donating to the new schools.
We recently had a bunch of our citizens and the boosters donate that new scoreboard at our football field. I mean, is that something that we can utilize in another area? I mean, that
We'll have to look
a lot of work.
We'll have to look at things like that.
Yeah, because it took a lot of work for them to raise that money as well for that scoreboard.
I know that I know that painfully.
Anything else, Noel, on that?
No, that's just a heads up for the school board that topic is coming up, that we will dive into deeper.
Thank you. And now who is covering the update on system integration?
I'll go through that. I'm just going to share that page if I can get to it. So I'm not going to go through all this line by line with the board. This was in your board packet, and it's definitely easier to see on a computer or an iPad opposed to seeing it on paper. But I just wanted to point out what exactly we're looking at. So we prior to being sequestered here, we met as an admin team in both schools in the various areas, and we started looking at and writing down all the different systems that need to be merged over the next 3 years, and kind of looking at a time frame for that. So as you go to the right, you have the area. So I'm going to use Bell schedule, for example. And then as you move to the right, there's various substrands of what needs to be done under Bell schedule. And then there are some timelines for all of those things. So anyway, it's broken up into, and it's color coded a little differently. Like when we get done with high school, moves into elementary and the color changes. And then you got transportation and buildings and grounds and finance and athletics, activities, community ed, school business, technology, safety and security, new buildings and construction, community public relations, and school board, staffing, purchasing supplies, counseling, Northland Learning Center, special ed, district office. So you can see that there's a number of, we've covered all the major categories. If you look at this document, you can see all the sub areas and kind of a timeline for that. In all, there's over 300 systems that need to be combined, which is one of the main points that we're trying to stress why it would be advantageous to consolidate sooner rather than later.
You're gonna have to turn down.
Somebody in Virginia's boardroom has got,
Yeah. It just goes to give an example or evidence of why we need to start this sooner than later. You know, you look at all of these different systems. I mean, there's, like you said, there's over 300 of them. We better start doing it now. So when we get into these new buildings, everything's ready and everything's there aren't going to be the problems.
and I think, I'll just use technology for an example here. You look at how long that list was I just rolled through. And I've had a number of people ask me, you know, why don't you just start doing that now? And the simple answer is, there are some things that we can start doing now, but there's others that you can't. For instance, Power School integration. If we're two separate districts, the Power School needs to remain separate. And the JAMP system and the Apple School Manager and a lot of those things, we can't get the same email domain. Just all those kinds of things that until we are actually consolidated, we can't give the green light for those folks to start doing that stuff, because in the event we don't consolidate, you've just wasted a lot of time. So
There's confidentiality issues with that too, correct?
well, there's that too, yeah. Any questions on that? Like I said, you can look it over yourself, and if you have questions, you can email Noel or I or call us.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else from anybody? Any other questions regarding items on the agenda?
I'd just like to piggyback a little bit on what Marie said. I mean, it's really important that we start doing some of this stuff before the doors open of the school. And I hope people see and start to understand the importance of that.
The other thing is too, I think, I would hope that we all understand that these people that are going to be doing this is a daunting task for them also, as they are doing their own job still. You know, this is above and beyond what they're doing right now. I mean, they're trying to get each building working themselves. Now we're adding more. And I just think that we should be very thankful for the people that we have doing this. Just me.
Same goes for the superintendents. I mean, they have their everyday operations that they need to be concerned about. It isn't just, you know, the new schools and the consolidation, collaboration. I mean, everybody's got the things that need to be done daily as well on their plates. It's just, we got to get going on some of this stuff.
Good points. At this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion, Director Latiger.
Support by
Director Anderson.
I think Director Addy had his thumb up for.
That he had, go for it.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Actually,
Aye.
Director Schoberg will have to take that.
Roll call vote.
Oh, when we adjourned our meeting last week, we were told we didn't have to adjourn, but to get it over with, Director Sundquist?
Aye.
Director Sundquist?
Aye.
Director Latiger?
Yes.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Mannanen?
Aye.
Director Addy?
Yes.
Director Schoberg's a yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys.
Great
See you
job.
later.
Yep.